Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Varanus podcast on the Trap Talk Reptile Network, the coolest reptile network in the world. Tonight, I've got a really exciting show with Bryan Waterloo. We're going to be talking about some Nile monitors, ornate monitors, and the lace work he's been doing. Some really underappreciated and misrepresented species in the hobby. But with no further ado, I'm just going to get Bryan straight on. Hope you guys enjoy the show. Hi, Bryan. How are we doing, mate?
Hey, Chris. How you doing?
All good, all good. Like I said, we just had a good discussion off the show. Sometimes I think we should just hit record and not bother and get that way. But yeah, we'll cover some of the stuff we've just been talking about, mate. But for people that don't know, can you just give us a little bit of a brief background? Don't go years back, but mainly what got you into the monitors, and then maybe just sort of what monitors you're working with just at the moment.
Well, I guess like every other herper out there, my fascination with reptiles, in particular monitors, started when I was, a young kid, learning about dinosaurs and having that interest, and then realizing, hey, some of these cool animals you have an appreciation for, you get a get. So the monitors were, I don't know, they just hit hard because of the just pictures from encyclopedias and stuff when I was a kid, looking through them, and then in my teens, I was able to acquire a Nile monitor, and that kind of started my, I guess, passion with that particular species, because they're just, they've always had such a bad reputation. And, as I got older and kind of started getting more into all the different species, but, the lace hit me too. That was another, species. It was an eye opener when I was a kid, like seeing this big adult male, in this encyclopedia, and wasn't sure what it was, and I was fascinated by them too, and then it just kept evolving, and then it's kind of like I guess most people that get bit by that monitor bug is you start cruising all down, and you're like, man, I really want to work with these. I'd love to work with these. So as time went on, I worked always at some point had Niles, and then started getting Ornates. Then got into croc monitors, but the lace were always just out of my reach. And
I don't think people appreciate how hard that was. I mean, I'm going back 20 years, and we used to see just pictures of them. Then you'd get some, I think Hank Malt sent me, he's a pretty well-known smuggler. He sent me a picture of some bells and some laces, but you'd never send him any money because you'd never see it again. It's just incredible. I don't think people realize how lucky we are to get those. Like,
absolutely,
the lace monitor is
incredible. Especially the bells in particular. But I went to Europe, like we were talking earlier. I met up with Gerard Visser, and I met up with Horn. And Visser was like, "I'll give you as many hatchlings as you want," because they had bred them there at Rotterdam. And then Horn was just he was all for it, but he didn't do it because they had just confiscated some Horneye, the Argus that he had sent to a zoo in Miami, and that there was something wrong with the permit, and he was just kind of really ticked off about it, and I don't blame him. So then that kind of petered out, and I'm like, well, I don't know, maybe hopefully they'll show up again. And then fast forward to like 10 years ago, and John and Dragna, was able to start bringing them in from Europe, and I jumped on it as soon as I could. So, and then started getting my small group established, and then luckily I ended up with a male and two females, and started, growing them. And then
so these they were hatchlings, were they, Bryan? Those ones that come in?
I'm sorry, what's that?
They were hatchlings. They were small ones that come in. I can't remember what in there. Yeah.
Perfect. Except for that real big male that is in the the podcast logo there. That guy, back when I was on Facebook, I started a lace monitor page group. I think it's still active. I'm pretty sure it is. Anyway, there was some guy from, I think, Germany that owned that particular male. And I ended up getting him from John Egan. And
Okay.
it was just so big that John's like, the rest of my lace are too small. He's like, so I ended up getting that male for free, of all things. I couldn't believe it.
Oh, wow.
I finally get a lace, and it's a Bell's that I got from a Dragna. And then, you know, I end up with this giant male, and I'm like, how much you want? He's like, you can just have it. I'm like, holy crap. So, yeah, I mean, talk about dreams coming true.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah, it just, you know, I made it a point. I'm like, well, now that I got the opportunity, I finally got him. I'm like, I'm going to do everything I can to, you know, successfully breed them. And I learned a lot.
Just going back a bit, Brian, were those, you saw the laces at Rotterdam Zoo. You visited there, did you?
Yeah. I was at Rotterdam. And then I used to call it Bochum, but I think it was the Bonn Zoo. They had that real big, giant, I don't know, I think like 20, 30-foot tall enclosure with a whole bunch of big lace in there. And then there was a couple other ones scattered on, you know, exhibit, but different. And then I saw the ones at Horn's house. I was in his basement, and I only had like 5 or 6 lace down there. He had a true Gould's monitor, which was freaking amazing. And he had a hatchling Rosenbergi.
Wow.
And what else? Coming on, I mean, George had everything, and he had these big, giant freaking croc monitors. But yeah, it was cool. Was cool experience being with him.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I would have loved to have got the chance to meet him. He's the true legend of the monitor world. Just amazing. Was that the first time you'd seen the lace in the flesh? I'm just saying that because I remember going to Rotterdam Zoo as a young child, and then they had a big. It was beautiful. It's closed now. I went back recently, and they've turned it into a cafe, which is just diabolical. Now they've got reptiles dotted around, but it's such a cool reptile house. But that aside, they had a big lace enclosure, and I must have sat there for half an hour to an hour just staring at these laces. But that's the first time I'd actually seen them in the flesh. I was just wondering if that was the same experience you'd had.
I want to say, yeah. I think Rotterdam was the first time I've seen them in person. I remember back in May, I think it was 1995. A guy named David Good held like a Varanus symposium in the States, and Horn was there, Visser, Eidmuller, Bennett, Trooper Walsh, who else? Wes Mannion, Matt. I mean, like all the big monitor people, Spracklin.
Wow.
And unfortunately, I think Horn and Visser were doing their, you know, like I don't know, breeding history through the zoos and, you know, what they've successfully hatched out and all that. And I'm, you know, watching the side, you know, the presentation, and I'm taking pictures of the actual screen because he's got all these little baby lace and all that. I'm like, man, just to have one of these, just to see him. And unfortunately, none of the zoos out here. I got Lincoln Park Zoo and Brookfield Zoo. They never had various. They did have Brookfield, and this is where my other passion with the Nile started. They had a big male ornate, just lone male, and I was just obsessed with that thing. They had like an adoption thing where you paid like, you know, $20 a month or something to adopt them, and they gave you like a little certificate. But I was just completely enamored by that lizard. I loved it, and that really kind of hooked me more with the whole Melodicus deal. But the lace, but the lace, seeing them in person and then going to Australia the year after and seeing them in the wild in person, it's
amazing. So you managed to find them in the wild.
Yep,
you managed to see him. Oh wow, that's incredible.
Yep,
it's always eluded me. I haven't spent much time on the eastern coast. I'm usually in the Western Australia looking for the dwarf monitors that are a bit more numerous there. So that must have been insane. But just seeing them at Rotterdam, it felt like we were a little bit closer to getting them because a lot of stuff used to come out of Rotterdam eventually into the private hands. So that's what I got excited about seeing them. But it was a long time, you know, John's shipment, and then that's the sort of time they started appearing in Europe as well to be bought. But that's what I think now they're becoming so popular, I guess. Well, it's just so available now, it seems. But I don't think people realize, like for me and you, what like a pipe dream that would have been to even see him in captivity. So that first group you lucked out and getting the 1.2. So how did you raise those guys up? Anything special or just standard sort of monitor techniques?
It was kind of standard monitor techniques. I mean, I knew a lot about lace before I got them. I've read, I don't know how many articles from like Weavers and Carter and, Horn's article. I mean, there was a lot that I had already known about them. So there wasn't anything like particularly different that I set them up with that I wouldn't set up for like any other monitor species. I usually keep bigger stuff. But yeah, it was kind of straightforward. It's like, I made sure that they had some height, decent size enclosure, had a nice tide. And then, fed them a proper diet and they did the rest.
So did you worry about like giving them a cooling period at all as babies, or you just straight bake them?
No, as babies, I baked them. The cooling period, all the breeding, everything, I started, getting into some deep water with it. And I reached out to Dave Kirshner, Croc Doc, and he basically was my mentor. And I did everything to a T that he's like, you got to do this, do that. And I did everything that he told me to do. And I started cranking them out. That first season of breeding, my female, I got 6 clutches of eggs from her, which I did not intend to get 6, but it's funny how lace just, an extra mouse or two will put them in another, cycle. And it's like, well, I'm not going to, waste this. So, but, the cooling, I definitely did as adults. I always do. It's always right about 4 or 5 months. And a lot of it, I usually wake them up in February, just because Chicago is, the weather out here in February is just miserable. And I got my barn is heated. I want to put them on. So if the power goes out, I'm like, I'm not dealing with like a severe storm and it's 30-mile-an-hour wind and it's like -10 out. And it's like, something happens. It's like they've been warmed up for a little bit, but it's a nice break too.
Makes it a bit easier for you to get stuff a bit cooler then with that sort of habitat you got in Chicago.
Yeah,
that makes it, because that can be almost a challenge. We got the challenge here. We got some tegus and stuff, and it's like they don't breed because we can't bromate them. And there's unless we really set up an air conditioned room, which is almost harder than heating things can be cooling stuff. So you can use that to your advantage for sure. So do you want to just go into what size you're keeping the adults in enclosure wise? We'll do a bit more on the enclosures. I think you wanted to touch on the enclosure and stuff a bit more in detail later, but just like a general overview of what's been working with the lace. Are you keeping them together all the time? Are you separating them?
Lace are always separate. The only time I'll pair them together is when I know my female is, in the start of a cycle. I have in the past had one pair that I kept together for a while, and I never had. They're pretty nice bonded pair, I guess, but normally no. I keep them separate. My one female, she's in 8 foot by 8 foot by 4 foot enclosure. Another male is in a 8 by 8 by 6, and then my other male is in like 10 by 10 by 10, big giant enclosure. And then my one female is actually not mine. My buddy Bryan got her from me, and unfortunately had to close his pet store. And he's like, just bring her by you. So she's here now. She's actually just laid a clutch of eggs on Monitor Fest. Yeah, that day. I got all these people here, and she's in the nest box laying. She's in like a relatively, I don't know, like 5 foot by 4 foot by like 5 foot, but she's small.
Do you see much of a discrepancy between the males? The males get a lot bigger than the females.
Oh yeah. Females, the biggest I've had, 4 foot, and that's a snout event of maybe 14 inches. I mean, females don't get that big. Males obviously get a lot bigger, and then they bulkier, and they're just the night and day difference. It's kind of funny to see, pictures I've had of my original female and my Bell male locked up, and he's just so much bigger than her, and it's like, geez, but
So
Um,
for people
It's
that
based-
don't know,
Go ahead.
there's two forms of the lace monitor. There's obviously the bells phase and the normal phase. I mean, I don't know if you want to get into it, Brian, but there's probably another at least two forms of the normal ones. There's the ones you get further north. Do you want to just go into that? I'm just going to quickly shut my door quick. It's just going to bang in a minute.
Okay.
2 seconds.
But yeah, the lace up north in the northern, I guess, part of their territory, they're a lot more spotted. They're not as banded. They have, a different pattern, more spots and fleckling. They'll have like some banding on their neck and on their chin and their throat or and their forearms. But yeah, you go a little further south, you get into South Australia and like the Sydney region, and they're like your typical lace. They have more banding. They're a lot darker, and I think a lot of it too is because it's a cooler temperature down there. They get the cooler parts of the month or parts of the year. And I think anything, it's just the darker color, more absorption. They're bigger because they consume bigger prey items, and they just kind of seem to like evolve, but it
makes sense. You start getting down those ways, you start getting diamond pythons, which is a black carpet python, basically, if you're looking at it like that. So it makes sense to get that morph, that locality for sure. I was speaking to Robert. He reckons there are even some distinguishing features with the tongue color. I don't know too much about that. I know he just put a post up asking for some pictures of the tongues.
Yeah, the ones from the south, which actually me and Spracklin were talking about this a long time ago, back in the Varanus NL days, and even at that conference. He had noticed it too. He's like, the ones up north, have more like a purple pink coloration, and then the ones south have more of a yellow, like white, not even like an off-white, but more of a yellowish tongue color. But then Croc Doc Dave, he sent me like 5 or 6 pictures. He's like, well, what do you make of this? And it's like a combination of both colors. I'm like, oh geez, I don't know what to tell you. But even like the bells. The bells have like a pink tongue, so and there's
the bells further west usually, aren't they? Where it starts getting a bit dry.
They're more like the scrub, drier areas, savannas, I guess. But there's variation with them. I've produced or hatched out bells that are black and yellow, and then I've hatched out ones that are black and white. However, I have seen some, and these are like photos from way back when, and these are animals that were in the wild, like black and brown, and they're just freaking hideous looking. And I don't know if it's, because they were digging into some kind of soil or something, but it's like a chocolate brown, and it was like, ugh. But they're still, maybe,
have they worked out what the, how it works with the bells yet? There was always a bit of confusion with that. Still confused.
Yeah, it's still, it's always been a morph. I know there's an Australian, her name, Coley is her name. She does have a bell that's kind of out there. I don't know if you've ever seen it, or some people that might be listening to this are familiar with it. But yeah, it's like I guess xanthic maybe or something. It's just black and white, like where the banding should be is just like like a white pattern. It's an odd looking animal. And Fi told me she hatched out like 5, or there was like 5 of them that hatched out. They all had this same unique kind of pattern to them. But outside of that, you have the whole super bell theory that's been out here for.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to bring up. But I don't know what's going on with that.
Well, it's one of these things where, the Python genetic guys are always on board. Like, well, if you do this, this, and that, you'll produce this and that. And it's like, well, no, the super bell theory has always been you'll produce a bells that has a very nice, clean pattern to it, which is kind of the extent of it. But recently, my buddy Alec, Roger, I can't think of his last name. Anyway, he produced a couple normals from his 2 bells breeding, and that kind of changed it, because usually it would, always the train of thought was normal to normal, you'll never produce a bell. Bell to bell, you'll never produce normals.
Yeah.
So, but that kind of has changed it. So maybe there's something with the super bell aspect of it, but I don't know. To me, it's always been horseshit. And someone like Croc Doc, who, he kind of feels the same way. He's like, it's just a morph. That's it.
Yeah. I just didn't know if they knew it was like a simple recessive yet, or if it was a dominant or whatever. If going back to like what a super would be for like a Python morph, that would mean that if you had a super, all the babies should be come out of bells, basically, which I don't think is what happens. I know what the guys are saying, because obviously if you breed a bell to a bell, you're sort of selectively breeding for bells, so that you'll get some really nice ones out, and then you keep doing it. But yeah, I think that's where the confusion might be, is if you take one of those supers and breed it to a normal, if it was an actual super, you'd get all bells out, basically, which I don't think it happens.
No.
But I mean, the other thing, Brian, is like, did you ever imagine that we would get bells in? Like, lace monitors were like a maybe, but bells ones is just like, that was way out.
No, never. And that, again, it's another aggravating aspect of, out here where, people that are just relatively, I don't know, new to this, or, it's like it's like you have no idea, how substantial this is, that they're out here, now they're established. And, I've had customers too who are like, well, I'll just wait for, fresh imports. It's like, they're not imported, they're this is it, so
that is it. Yeah.
Beggars can't be choosers. And I've said before on, I think MJ's podcast, be fucking thankful that they're out here. It's like
100%. Yeah.
I don't know how much what to tell you. I mean, it's like, it's almost like any other species you get. Like, I've been on a perennial pursuing deal here for quite some time. And I've told people, I'm like, I could just pick, that's another thing where I could see, all right, let's say they finally make it into captivity and people start breeding them. 5 years later, you're going to have people like, oh, dude, you want how much for that perennial? It's like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that's what I try to do a bit on this podcast, is just make people, just give people the knowledge. I mean, it's not the newcomer's fault if none of us are telling them it, but it's like a real massive thing to have some of this stuff that we've got. Lace monitors,
exactly.
I never... and Prenti's, I can see one day possibly going in if more and more zoos get them, especially if some of the European zoos, they might trickle out one day. But for people that have been in it a long time, that is like that's never going to happen type scenario. So we really, really need to appreciate it. And just going back to the bells thing, it's almost like a little annoyance of mine. I don't know how true it is, but from what I've seen, all the effort's been put into breeding those bells. It seems like we might lose the normal one if people don't breed the normal laces. I don't know how true that is, but I see sometimes a lot more bells turn up, or see people with bells rather than that normal phase.
Yeah, I have I only have one bell right now. All my rest are normals.
Perfect.
And then my original trio, the male was a bell, and then the 2 females were both normal. So and they're distinct line. They came from Horn originally, because the ones I've seen at Rotterdam, the ones I've seen at Horn's house, all my normals have that black head to them, and it's like it was unique because it was identical to the ones that were out there. And I do know Horn's stuff eventually made its way out through Europe and then into the States. But the normals, I like the normals more than I like the bells. So I'll never stop producing the normals.
It's just a weird thing that happens in this hobby sometimes, is like we focus on one thing so much that, unless there's people like you and a few others, you lose the one. And then, if you look at the market side of thing, I bet the normal ones probably outweigh, price wise, can be outweighing the bells soon, if that hasn't happened already.
They're like $1,000 difference right now. But that's the thing, is a lot of people with the bells is because, when they first hit the market, because, when a Dragna brought them in, Don Church had them, John Egan had them, and I had like just one. And Don was, like a year ahead of me, maybe longer, and so was Egan. And I remember Don producing them, and then it was like the first ever captive-born statewide bells, and he made a fortune on them. And,
Oh, yeah.
you know, I think people see the dollar signs and it's like, well, you know, bells will never be out of, you know, fashion. But yeah, now it's so flooded with them, and it's like, you know,
it's the same with those King Orem that I touched on earlier that Byrne had. He had those leucistic or whatever you want to call them hatch out, and it's like super hard to get just a normal one when I was looking for in Europe. So we just need to be a bit more responsible. Some of, you know, keeping the one that's a bit less money, but usually it ends up being more money eventually anyway, if that's the way you want to look at it. But just to not lose stuff. They're never coming in again, probably, especially not out of Australia. That's not going to happen. And I doubt if you wouldn't be able to get them out of Europe into the States again very easy from what I know. So,
no, I know that was I don't know if you know Philip, nice guy, or heard of him. Yeah, so
he's from the next village to me, actually, well, the next town along from me. So
oh, nice. At one point I had like 20 something hatchlings, and I'm like, you know, trying to move them, and I'm not having the greatest luck selling them. I mean, they all eventually sold, but I remember I'm getting a hold of Phil. I'm like, hey, can you use some baby lace out there? And he's like, it's not worth it. He's like, you know, the hassle to get them shipped over and the paperwork and all that. And he's like, after that last shipment that came to the States, they clamped down on stuff because there was supposedly a couple smuggled ones that came out of, I don't know, via like China or some crap, and there were some bells, but and then I know that there was like a whole deal with the Spencers too, which is another species. Like, they're out here and people are like, well, how much are they? And it's like, they're Spencers.
Dude.
You know, same with the Mertens. You know, it's like any Australian species that's here. It's like, you know, there's no shipment coming, you know, next summer for them. So again, you know.
No, I think I'm pretty sure we've lost. I think most of those Spencers must have come from Europe, because I know the guy that had them. I think we've pretty much lost those in Europe. I could be wrong. Not really in touch with that now. Obviously, I'm in Indo, but I think most of them went to the States, and I think they're lost in Europe now. So we can't get them, and we probably can't get them back from the States. So we're always treading this fine line of stuff being completely gone, which we'll get into with the Nile stuff in a minute. But it's just crazy. But we're very lucky, and people should appreciate them for sure. I don't know what more you want to say on the laces, really. The nesting's pretty interested on them, Brian. I mean, if people really want to go into it, like you say, that Croc Doc's done an amazing series that's amazing for any breeder of any monitor. I've learned loads of stuff off it. It focuses mainly on lace monitors, and it's like, you know, it's amazing. So if people want to go and really get into it, I'd recommend that. But the nesting with the termite nesting, that was the other thing. Did Frank not have laces in the States? Was he not producing them, or what happened to those ones? They just fizzled out?
Yeah. He was at that conference too. And I don't know. It always seemed to be like a hit or miss situation with him. And I don't know. I don't want to get into tit for tat.
No.
But basically, I'm pretty sure he only bred him a couple times, and that was the end of it.
Right. Yeah. I never knew how successful. He was one of the only guys that was keeping them. I mean, we're talking back in the forum days when he'd show pictures and stuff. But I didn't know how many he'd actually produced to be in. And obviously, it can't have been a lot if they needed to bring an import in. So, like I said, we're lucky with how successful we're being with the monitors now, to be able to sort of keep them in captivity a bit more, because, so much stuff we've nearly lost. But just to touch on the nesting, I mean, it's pretty similar to all the other monitors, but are you doing anything special there? Any special substrate or anything?
Yeah, I just used crushed coconut. I don't use any other. Basically, it's, you know, when I was in Australia, one of the guys I hooked up with out there, we were in a field and they were clearing the field with these big, you know, the big graders, and they clipped the termite mound, and I saw it like the inside of the termite mound because I, you know, chopped off like a foot of it. But it's like, it looks like coffee grounds inside there. So Dave Kirshner, you know, he's like, it's the only stuff you should be using, because they won't, you know, otherwise you're not going to have any success. And I've had people that you know, been out here working with lace, and you know, there's like fighting me with like, well, I got this. I'm like, well, they're not going to lay in there. I don't tell you. They don't like the, I'm like, this is the preferred stuff. And that's all I use. And then I pack it. So, you know, they really got to dig into it. And I heat it. My nest boxes are all heated. So their surface temperature is, you know, probably like in the 70s. So when they start digging in there, they find that sweet spot at 85 degrees. But I got to, you know, they got to make their way through it.
You're doing the same as David with your heating from the bottom rather than the side or the top. Yeah.
I've done bottom and I've done sides. Either one, they both work out. So
yeah, I like it on the side. It seems a bit more natural for me that they can sort of go that way. But yeah, with the monitors I've got here now, they're all underneath because it's just the way it works over the size of heat mats and stuff we've got, and it works just as well, or at least it seems to. So anything that was a surprise with keeping them, or anything you thought these are any different? I mean, they're super intelligent from what I know.
How messy they are. They are slobs. Yeah. Buddy of mine, I remember he bought a couple from me, and he had this cage all decked out, and I'm like, yeah, it looks great. He's got all these hiding areas, the basking here, and it was like one little area that he like didn't waterproof or do any kind of like, you know, like, yeah, they're not going to do anything back there. I'm not worried about it. And this little Nile or lace is on the cork tube, and he pivots his ass like this, and just a giant turd on that one wall that he did not cover, and like all that stuff went down behind the cork tube. I'm like, they're slobs. I'm like, they just, you know, unfortunately, this is how they are. I mean, they'll dump right where they're basking, and I'm like, really? So
yeah,
that was the one surprising thing. And I remember, I think it was Steve Wilson and Matt Vincent's book on Australian monitors, and yeah, that was like the last thing on there. Like, they are incredibly dirty animals. It was like, well, that's definitely not an understatement. But yeah, outside of that, nothing in particular really comes to mind about, you know,
diet-wise. More birds, more rats, more. Is it strict? You know, any insects? Obviously, insects when they're younger, it must be.
I never did my hatchlings on roaches or any kind of bugs. I always started them right off with chopped up rodents.
Yeah,
I know in the wild, Tony Harrison is a, like, you know, animal recovery guy out in Australia, and I remember asking him, I'm like, you know, all the lace, what do they regurge when you catch them? And he's like, it's all birds.
Wow.
So,
okay.
Yeah. But you know, it could be a seasonal thing. It could be just, you know, the getting is good in one area or whatever. But
yeah,
but still across the board, that's quite a bit.
You can rate on that, so that's good.
Yeah, but they will, you know, they're, like I've said before. I mean, between like lace, perennies, and probably like croc monitors, they're probably one of the handful of monitors that, you know, probably have a fair bit of mammal diet in them in the wild as well. So, you know, they seem to fare well on it as compared to other stuff.
The hatching crocs here, they will take the occasional, you know, insects and stuff, but they're not bothered. You chuck a mouse in there and they're all over it. So yeah, it's definitely the preferred diet. What about this? Just going back to, you know, just we won't stay on the laces for too long. Bryan's done some amazing podcasts. Go into things in real depth, and we want to get into some of the more misunderstood and underappreciated monitors. But maybe just like, what substrate are you using for the hatchlings, or do you change that when it gets to adults? Anything different there between the hatchlings and adults?
No, I mean, I've been using like regular cypress mulch over the years.
Yeah.
The hatchlings are like on what was it, cocoa chip stuff that I don't know, just kind of came out here for, I don't know, like the last 10 years. Like, you know, they're just little chunks of coconut. They work great. Yeah. They're not, surprisingly, at least, they're not real big diggers. So I've never really, you know, had like, you got to have like 2 feet of dirt for like an Argus monitor or something. They're happier with, you know, the height and branches, and, you know, I have shelves and stuff, and, you know, ledges. So yeah, I mean, if they're on the ground occasionally, but like I'm looking at a hatchling bell right now in my barn, and he's just sitting on a log, just chilling out. But yeah, normally they're up.
Arboreal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, if that's all we've got on the lace stuff, Bryan, you happy to move on to the next bit, which is your big passion and the bit I'm super excited about. Let's get into the really, really misunderstood and overexploited monitors, which is the Nile monitors and the ornate monitors. I'm still going to call them that, but we can get into that. So yeah, take it away.
Yeah. So go ahead.
I said, which one do you want to start with? Do you want to start as the complex? Have we got a Nile monitor? What is a Nile monitor compared to the ornates? Or like I said, Bryan, this is your bit. So you tell me how you want to go, and I'll think of some questions for you.
Well, yeah, I guess we could start with the just the whole Niloticus, like your common Nile. So as we were discussing backstage before, there's new research has been done, and there's just now 2 types of Nile monitors: the Varanus Niloticus and then the Varanus stellatus. And they basically sunk Ornates into not even a subspecies. Like it was it almost sounds like a mixture of stellatus and Niloticus bred and produced the Ornates. But that's also a little bit off of a tangent. But basically, from my perspective and from all the years of working with Niles and, looking at just endless photos of them online and in books and all that, there's definitely distinction between their range from the east to the west and to the south.
I can just bring this map up if that helps, Bryan.
Yeah.
So obviously we've got Africa here. So yeah, just tell us where if we keep ornates as we'll probably get into as like a separate species. So we're working now with potentially three recognized species, but we've not really lost the ornates. But if we kept it as that, just to keep it simple, what range are we looking at the common Niloticus that you find in the pet trade most often?
Right now, a lot of them, and this is for the your regular Nile monitor, and then your ornates are like, so if you go to West Africa, right at the base of the skull, I guess, like Togo, Ghana, and Benin are like and they basically, it's like west of Nigeria and like Gabon and Cameroon. So it's like that. Like I said, if you look at the skull or the map of Africa, it looks like a skull.
Yeah.
So it's like at the base of the, like where the spine would come in. That whole western area of Africa seems to be just, where majority of the stuff is coming out of. You got Senegal, a little bit further west and a little north by like Ghana. Some of them Niles are coming from there. They have like that Senegal locality to them.
Right.
But just these 2, these main areas, Ghana, Togo, and Benin, it's not so much that they're, that locality specific. It's more like, these are like shipping points that they're moving them out of the country, possibly.
That's a lot where the royal pythons come out of, I'd imagine, as well. So maybe they're getting collected at the same time. Yeah,
because you got, Liberia, Sierra Leone, and all that over there. I mean, it's kind of a shipping hub or main area that they're possibly coming out of. But, essentially that's like where they're coming. Years ago, we used to be able to get just regular Niles out of South Africa. And those are completely different from, your West African typical Nile monitors you see in the pet trade right now. There's a series. I was saying there's a bunch of pictures I sent you of them, but we could click on them and like that one that's go up right there. Down.
Oh.
Okay. Can you zoom in on that a little bit?
This one, Bryan?
No, the one you just clicked on, the one right below it. Go straight down.
Oh, below it.
Yeah.
2 seconds. This one.
There you go.
Perfect.
That is your typical South African giant freaking Nile monitors that we used to be able to get, you know, back when I was in my, you know, early 20s and all that. Unfortunately, that I had an opportunity to probably get a Nile about that size from some kid bought it at a store, grew it up, and he was moving to college or whatever. And the mom was like, I need to get rid of this thing. It was like $100. And I was going out and I'm like, you know, I'm going to stop here and look at it. And I should have gave her the money, but I'm like, I'll just pick it up tomorrow because it's like a Friday night. I'm like, I'm not going to be home. But it was gone like the next day, and I never see hair of that thing ever again. But yeah, now if you look at that particular male, it just the skull structure, just the overall, you know, girth of them. I mean, they're tanks. In fact, one of the biggest Niles, and I saw this picture. When I was at Horn's house. I don't know if it was ever published or not, but I think sometime in it was late 80s or early 90s. It was Pretoria, South Africa. There was a big Nile that was shot by a school, and the guy, this African dude, is holding it up, and he's standing on a milk crate, and the tail is still like on the ground, and the head slumped over, and it was just a big giant male. Supposedly it was a female, but that thing had to be like every bit of 8 foot. It was just enormous. Huge. Yeah, and unfortunately, that photo, I don't know whatever happened to it. I just seen it in his office, and he only had like the one picture of it. So, but yeah, the South African ones, they're monsters. And they had like, again, those were like the typical Niles that you were able to get, at least on stateside, for probably since the 80s going into the 90s. Then if you go further north, you get into Uganda, and then you start getting into Rwanda, Burundi, parts of Tanzania. But the Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, those localities, those are Niles as well, and they're really colorful. But those are the ones I was saying, Chris. They only have 6 rows of spots on them. They don't have anything more than 6. I've had a couple. There's a picture of one of the hatchling, or not a hatchling I had, but it's like a photo, like from a 35 millimeter camera, and he's like in my crappy cage back then. I think it's the very first one on the second row. Yep, that was him.
Yeah.
So that is a Uganda, Burundi locality Nile. And they have the distinct black spot like in the front of their shoulder there, but they're protected now. You can't get them out of Uganda, but they also there's pictures of adults that I sent you as well. And these photos, a lot of these for disclaimer, I guess, I just grab them off of iNaturalist because they have awesome photos, and then they're very specific where they took the photos at. But the ones from like Queen Elizabeth National National Park and like the Kazinga Channel. Let's see, that big blue southern one, the southern one we looked at. I think to the left is a Uganda one, right below it.
That one, yeah.
Let's see that one. Yep.
So anyone listening on the audio stuff, I recommend going on the YouTube just to see what we're talking about. But carry on, Brian.
But I mean, this another one where if you look at just the head of that thing and just the overall mass. I mean, you don't have to be a herpetologist to be like, that's a really big lizard. That's a really big lizard. But the point being with the differences is like, again, it's like if they're 2 different localities and they have unique specifics to each one, you know, it's like, again, it's not like they're a whole new species, but it could fall into that subspecies category, possibly.
Yeah.
But that being said, their unique aspect is, like I said, the Uganda and like the, you know, Burundi or Niles. Like I said, they have the distinct, you know, they only have the 6 rows of band or spots on them. They also get the big, massive head, like an ornate almost. And then the South African ones are just completely darkened coloration. They're, you know, just, I think they get bigger bulk wise. And then you compare them to like your typical West African Nile that's in the pet trade. Those guys are getting, you know, 7 foot, but they don't achieve that bulk. They don't get anywhere near that massive. I mean, they're, you know, generally just maybe 20 pounds tops if you could get them. Like some of these South African, like these bigger, you know, these guys are like 30, 40 pounds. They're just, you know, just a massive animal. But the West African ones, like I said, the ones that are more in the pet trade, even a big adult male, their whole the heads are probably no bigger, you know, than like an adult female South African or, you know, East African Nile. So
way more streamlined, and from what I remember, just many more spots. I mean, that's how I knew I had an ornate monitor when I was, you know, 12, 13, because I think it had 5 rows of spots between the hind
3 to 5.
It had 5 rows. There's a really good book. I don't know if you know what it is, Brian, or who it was. I'm sure he was in the States. Someone wrote a book on all the Niles and stuff.
Yeah, Rob Fouts, good friend of mine.
Perfect. Yeah. I've lost the book now. I'll have to re-buy it again. I was looking for it the other day, but I used to read that religiously, obviously, when I had my first Nile. A fantastic book.
Rob is. I just talked to him the other day. He's got
amazing
one of my male lace on loan with the female he got for me. He just dug up 9 eggs from her. But yeah, Rob bred Ornates, and Rob did that book. It's funny. I met him through Mark Bayless, and he was like, "Hey, he's another Nile guy. You guys probably I've known Mark or Rob for I don't know how many years now. The first time I met him in person was at my wedding. Go figure.
Oh wow.
Yeah, but yeah, no, Rob's a good dude. You should have him on your. I've been telling people, I'm like, yeah, because he's worked with the black throats, white throats, Niles, Ornates. He's
it was a fantastic book. I remember the front cover of it with the Nile head on it. I think it was. If I remember right. But yeah, that's how I knew. So yeah, going back to the West African Nile monitors, they seemed a lot more streamlined. Maybe because they're you know, the heads, like you were saying, Brian, are not that
more
bulky.
pointy.
I wonder, it's I wonder if that's just to do with the diet preference they've got.
Probably
or that. Yeah. Where these guys might be smashing about maybe more crustaceans or something. I don't know.
Interesting. I would say that like your east or
the western ones.
Yeah. No, the eastern ones and like the southern locality. I know that's probably a big part of their diet as well, is, you know, crabs and all that. We'll get into that with the Ornates, but the you know, the other half of it too is on top of, like, you know, crocodile eggs and hatchling crocs. I'm sure they're eating like a lot of, like, you know, clams, mollusks, turtles.
For sure.
You know, some of them the harder shelled prey items, which, you know, equates to them having them just giant big heads on them. Where I think the West African ones are, you know, probably not consuming as much as, you know, some of the bigger crabs or stuff like that. Maybe more concentrated on like the frogs and, you know, other lizards and
for sure.
You know, those kind of scenarios. And it's funny too, is like a lot of, you know, everyone's seen the documentaries on crocodiles, and they always have like a Nile and like 2 or 3 of them that are raiding the nest, and it's like they're always like the same South or, you know, East Africa aspects of it. It's always like it's like the same groups that are always concentrating on you know, on the crocodiles. But yeah, the Westerns, I think, because more of it's savanna, scrubby kind of area. I mean, it falls in line with their pattern too, because they're, you know, they technically have like that goldish yellow and and then, you know, all the rows of spots on them, and, you know, they get like that, you know, that brown tan coloration to them. So they're not as colorful, and I think it's, you know, like I said, they're more, you know, in a scrubby savanna.
Yeah, less contrast, I'd say, more pixelated pattern. I remember something, I don't know if you can confirm it, Brian, but the ones, is one of them got more of like a lateral crest on the tail? Is it bigger on any of them, or is that not right?
Well,
the ornate or not? I can't remember what it is.
Theirs not as high.
That's it. Yeah, that's something I noticed with them.
But the West Africans, they get a pretty high crest on their tail. And then the photos we looked at, like the, you know, South African and the East African. I've also seen photos of like, I don't know, just like, again, like there's one, it's, I think the very top right. I think that, no, that was one of my Burundis.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
The picture doesn't do it any justice. But there's a picture of one that's walking in like it's like in the middle of like a rice field. You know, it's like in the almost in the water. But that one's got a real, you know, good, I guess, demonstration of that high. Yeah, that might be that one. There you go. And that's like your West African. That's like your in the pet trade typical, and you can see how small and narrow, and you know it's probably a big male, but you can see how, you know, just how pointy that head is.
For sure. Yeah,
you know, they don't get them big mastoid muscles, you know, like the Ornates do, and like the, you know, the East and the Eastern and the Southern Niles. And the Stellatus ones I've seen, they're very similar to these, and I wonder if the Stellatus are more, you know, up towards the northeast of Africa, where, you know, they're up and down the Nile there, and they're not, you know, they're just outside of the desert area, which would kind of fit with that pattern and that you know, that color they had, because the other ones they just don't line up. But, you know, like you said, that animal there, you know, the head structure just shows, just, you know, they're not as massive, not as bulky.
Definitely. Is there any difference in the tongue color at all, or they all got the same sort of tongue color across all of them?
I know that there's it might have been Sprackling too. I know Rob, I think he mentions it in his book, with the exception of the Ornate, always having a pink tongue. The other guys, they're, you know, I've had Niles that had like almost black, like purple black tongues, and then some that were a little bit lighter, but there is some variation in the tongue colors, but it doesn't seem to.
But going back to those ornates are always pink.
Correct.
So it's another distinguishing feature.
Well, there's that. And then obviously the spots, you know, only 3 to 5 rows. They never exceed that. But then the other half of it is just how massive Ornates get. Like that, the pictures I sent you, that the dead one with that guy, he's got his boot next to it for size comparison.
Yeah, this is insane.
Yeah. I mean, it's, again, how there's like, I don't know, any sense of, well, yeah, these are the same animal. It's like, no, they're not. Not only that, you know, keeping both Ornates and, you know, your regular Niles in captivity, you house them together, them Ornates will freaking kill them. And I know that firsthand because I've had that happen. And this is with not like, you know, adults or young adults. These are with like, you know, ones that are maybe 1.5 feet long. The Ornates distinctly, you know, made a point to freaking destroy that Nile I had all together in one cage. I thought they were fine, and nope.
Wow.
And I know people have tried to breed, you know, cross Ornates with Niles, and no luck. The Ornates usually try to kill them. Yeah. And it's not, you know, in my instance with the one that was killed, it wasn't a predation. They just killed it. There was no, like, I'm going to eat it. He just done. And just left it. So, It's kind of, it doesn't fall in line with, well, yeah, they'll predate on each other. And it's like, no, they distinctly do not like one another. And it's funny because they got a little bit where their territories will cross. I mean, if you look at like from Cameroon, Uganda, I mean, the whole DRC going back to the west, they're kind of peppered all over there between ornates and then your commons. So they do overlap, but yeah, it's a wide range. But they just seem to, I don't know. Your typical Niles have always been, they're close to the rivers, they're always close to the water, and the ornates are more of a forest monitor. And I think there's a lot of distinction to that and a lot of truth to it, where they're kind of, they're not competing, which again, I think there's quite a variance with their diet. Like I said, ornates, well, we didn't get into it, but a lot of their diet is like crabs, like just 50% of it. And then to fill the niche, as far as like the Niles feeding on Nile crocodile eggs, ornates have been known to dwarf crocodiles. They'll eat them, they'll eat their eggs. So they're still filling that same, crocodile population control. Yeah. But they're different areas where, like I said, your regular Niles are, I think, more towards like the bigger river areas and pools and lagoons and all that, where the ornates are more inland, and then slower moving creeks, little pools of water here and there. And granted, they both swim great, but it's more of a, I guess it's probably why there's not a lot of really solid information on ornates out there from a field perspective, because they're
harder to find, to see. But yeah, definitely interesting. And to go that far, being that morphologically distinct. I mean, I'm a super splitter. I split absolutely everything if it was up to me. But yeah, it was a shock when they got rid of the Ornates. So yeah, hopefully someone will bring that back. And a bit like we said, the DNA evidence for this stuff sometimes overwrites just common sense. It's like if you can look at it, and I can't remember who it was. I think it was Ryan and Nick that were saying that the Barkers were saying, the Python guys. If you can look at it, 100 times out of 100, you can separate them off. Then it's probably you're looking at a new species, and you could definitely do that with ornates just by counting them rows of spots back. So yeah, I don't know. That taxonomy sometimes baffles me. I'd rather split it, especially for captivity. And so I mean, it's a good thing. That's a win for me that they don't actually hybridize with each other. It doesn't sound like that's going to be too easy to do. So that's a good thing. But a lot of things will do that. And again, going back to what we were saying earlier, that's why we lose a lot of stuff, just from just not bothering to keep it pure. But let's get to the ornates then. Unless there's anything you wanna touch more on the Niles. Like I said, most of the stuff you'll be seeing now coming in. Just touching on the Niles is. You see so many coming in. Do you think that's the only reason that people don't keep them, or bother trying to breed them? Well, I like you've sparked my interest over here now, especially with the Ornates. I'd love to have some in Indonesia now, because I forgot how beautiful they are. It becomes because you see them so much, the Niles. I think that's probably what's caused them a bit detriment, really. And we're being so much more successful now with the monitors. We could probably easily be captive breeding more than ever before, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I know. Just recently, Fox Reptiles, he produced Niles. Chris Parker, he produced Niles. My buddy Andrew Llewellyn, he's in PA. He's produced them quite a few times too. Unfortunately, it's like I feel bad for Duraka. He cranked out them blue tail pastels. 4 clutches or whatever. And, he's competing now with wild caught ones. And, the same thing goes with with your regular Niles. I mean, a couple of years ago, I remember I bought 10 of them for like $100 at the tail end of the reptile show. Guys like, you buy 10, I'll sell them to you. He was selling them for like $40 a piece. And he's like, dude, just get them off my table. I'm like, all right, I'll take them. And they ended up, being rehomed to good people. And a couple went to, FACT. Yeah, I sent a pair to Quetzal and Ari in Texas with they have my big Bell male on loan out there too. But that being said, is the problem that sucks is that bringing them in and the numbers they bring them in. I mean, once they come in, it's like they're on every other table. And the other half of it, which again, is that if you buy one, you raise it up, and you really work with it, you'll have a nice, relatively tame Nile that's easily 5-6 feet long. That it's you got to be patient with them because they have that tenacious attitude, and it's not even an attitude. I mean, I've been saying this for freaking decades. It's you got to look at the habitat they're coming from. They're out there with every apex predator, in Africa that they're dealing with: leopards, lions, hyenas, foxes, or what do you call it? Everything out there. And they're also they're like the town thief. So they're always screwing somebody over for a meal. I mean, so you have to have the tenacity to survive.
A bit of an attitude.
But it's funny is that if you work with them, like I've had some big adult Niles, and people are like, dude, I'll buy them from me right now. And it's like, buy a baby and just raise it up, and in a couple of years, this is what you'll have. And if you can't, you don't have the patience.
How successful are the ones that come in? I know with boss monitors, the mortality on those is pretty high. I can't remember what it was like with the Niles when I had my shop. They seem to do pretty well from what I remember. You probably know a bit more about it, Brian. But if you get the wild caught ones, I mean, that's probably another detriment. Do you get many problems with them? Obviously, the captive bred ones are going to be better, but they're pretty solid, aren't they?
Yeah. I guess, Chris, I've not been lucky, but also, I don't know, I guess when I'm picking the animals, I'm like, all right, that one doesn't look so good. I'm not going to deal with it. So, but no, their Niles will like that. They take off. They eat like immediate. I mean, it's put like this. If you kill a Nile, you really have lost your way. I mean, they're that hardy. They can tolerate a lot of mistakes. The biggest problem with them is their diet. Niles and Ornates in general, they're not meant to eat a shitload of rodents, and that's been the staple diet for years. I mean, even like savannas. I don't know how many pictures I'm sure you've seen and I've seen. You got a savanna that's like this big around, and it's like, what are you feeding it? But it also.
And they seem to do a lot worse on it as well than maybe the Niles that I've seen. The boss monitors and just seem to you get them to a certain size and then people kill them. Where I couldn't remember that happening much with the Niles. But like I said, both stupidly fed, especially the boss monitors. That's probably another podcast in itself. But they shouldn't be these big horrible plate size things. They're pretty skinny monitor in the wild, eating scorpions and millipedes.
Exactly.
Not, pork pies and whatever else.
And that's another aspect of keeping them in captivity. Every Nile I've had, ornate, they're always set up with water, and it's not like a little bowl. It's always been, depending on their size, something they can float. Like both of the Ornates in here now have, they can drown in their pools. I mean, they're deep enough, they're big enough. But it's something that, with the diet, it doesn't help as far as giving them like a high mammal diet. I mean, they just cleaning the water constantly. I mean, I got to do that anyways, but it's something where the new enclosures I'm planning on building for, this pair of Ornates is, I want to incorporate a bigger pool of water for them, but I want to also be able to filter it and, not have to do like daily water changes with it. And if you have them more on a natural diet, which there's no excuse nowadays where people can't, get whatever, pheasant, quail, regular chicks. You could get crayfish online. You could get crabs online. I mean, there's like so many like seafood markets, shrimp. I mean, I'm feeding them today, like whole man of shrimp that I got from a seafood place, 2 towns over. So, I mean, there's enough animal prey items out there that they are more in tune to eat, and it's more natural for them, that actually are a lot less expensive than, you know, buying a whole bunch of bulk rats and mice and all that. But it just, it makes things easier as far as, you know, wanting to be able to filter out your water and not having to do, you know, just massive water gallon. Like, you know, I got like the one thing, it's like 50 gallons. So changing that every day is just, you know, I do it if I have to, but it'd be nice to have that filtered. But, you know, if I'm feeding them a bunch of rats and mice, you know, I got just big turds I got to deal with. And it's also, you know, it contributes to them becoming obese and probably other health issues with them that further down the line. But,
For sure.
you know, it's something that unfortunately has been the norm for so long. And, you know, people are starting to break away from it, which is good. And, you know, trying to get them more on a natural diet, which, you know, I think is definitely
That's the way
a benefit.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's great that people are actually bothering to breed them. I don't know of many people working with breeding them in Europe, at least. I went to one show in Houghton once, and there was a lovely young girl there. She bred a whole load of boss monitors, and nobody was visiting the table because, you know, they seen boss monitors on all the wild caught one. I made a point of going over and just speaking to her and just saying, "This is fucking cool." It's like, well done for doing this. Not an easy species to do. And I really appreciate it. If I could take some, I would. But yeah, you know, and she was happy that someone had recognized, you know, a clutch of
all that hard work. Yeah.
Hard work. Yeah. So, yeah, that's great to hear that people
probably a lot of it, Chris, is that, you know, it's that unfortunate aspect of it. I mean, I've yet to breed Niles. I've had so many that I probably could have, but that's always been, I guess, a deterrent, unfortunately. And it's kind of selfish. It's like, all right, now what? You know, I got 40 freaking Niles I need to get rid of. And it's, you know, it's hard enough to find a home for one. Now you multiply it by that many. And then, you know, even at like a reasonable price. I mean, like I said, my one buddy, he got to the point where he's like, I'm selling them at like $10 more than they were for a wild caught. And some people didn't even realize they're captive born. And he's like, I didn't even bother arguing anymore. It's like, yeah, this is what I want for them. But
yes, a lot of work to convince that market, really, because they do so well, as you were saying, as wild caught. That's going to be a tricky one, but hats off to those guys for actually bothering to do it and prove you can do it.
The only way to put an end to it is like everything, you know, quit bringing them in, which they'll never do. You know, it boggles my mind that, you know, green iguanas still come in every year. It's like, why? I mean, we don't need them, you know, and then it would open up that appreciation for them too. It's like, you know, if you think about it, they're just, you know, for as big as they get, as long as they live, and Niles average like 20 years, to be just like a throwaway pet like that, it's just, I don't know.
It's heart-wrenching.
Yeah. But, you know, as small as a dent that we put into it in the pet trade, you know, the skin trade is 10 times worse. I'm not, you know, trying to downplay either one, but yeah, the pet trade, if they stopped and they just limit it to like maybe 1,000 a year and maybe drop that down to like 500, yeah, people would probably have more of an appreciation for them.
Yeah, it's the same for a lot of stuff like that. We get the retics over here. You know, it's just the skin trade people really don't know, and the focus usually on the pet trade for some reason. But that aside, let's get into the ornate stuff then. These are my favorite. These are the ones I'd really like to keep again. Picture.
Go to that real yellow, colorful picture down. Yeah. Nope.
This one.
Yep, that one.
That one. 2 sets. Right, Brian, I gotta go to the toilet, mate. But if you just do that, I can hear everything you're saying. I'll be back and listen to you. Cheers, mate.
Oh, there it is. Okay. So, for those of you at home looking, that particular ornate was the picture was in Cameroon, and unfortunately, areas like Gabon, Cameroon, they're just nobody exports out of there, or you can't get them from out of there. But that picture, I took that, or it was from an encyclopedia, and that was probably, I don't know how old that photo is, probably from the 70s maybe, but it just shows how beautiful ornates are. And you know, there's locality variation, you know, from one of the nice, like the ornates I have here right now, they don't look like that, but you know, they're still on par with the yellow and the black and all that. But yeah, it's an unfortunate collection point that we can't get them out of there. And it's be nice, because they're just, you know, looking at them, they're beautiful, beautiful ornate. And they have all the properties of your typical ornate. They get massive and, you know, would produce some really nice looking babies. But yeah, it's just unfortunate, like Gabon, Cameroon. My buddy Rob Faust, who we were talking about, he had a hatchling like this, and unfortunately he lost it. And the guy he got it from, he wasn't bringing any more in anytime soon, and you know, that was like the last batch of it. But yeah, that Cameroon locality is just beautiful. But they're just, you know, it's like the East African Uganda locality, Niles are protected.
Yeah.
So you know, you can't take them out of there anymore. But yeah, these Cameroon ones are really pretty. And then there's that black and white photo I have of that real big male who's in the water.
So I don't know if you touched on it, Brian. Is it typical for them to have this banding? Is that
no? It's kind of seems like only the Cameroons have it. Rob calls them peanuts.
Yeah. I can remember my ornate had the 5 rows, but they were quite big spots. I've not seen this one with the banding. That's amazing.
Yeah, I think even that real big that male that's in the water there, the black and white photo. Yeah, that's a monster. Look at the head on that thing.
Oh, it's insane. Yeah, it's almost like the white throat's head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
On them,
even at the bottom jaw, you know, just that whole. That's probably every bit of 8 foot, and that was I believe that was from Gabon, that photo. Okay. And that was, I think, from like the 60s or something. It was an old photo. But yeah, that one too, same thing with the pattern, where it's that real faint
joined up.
Yeah. So they kind of vary from, you start going from like Cameroon, Gabon, and you start going west. That's where the pattern starts to become more your typical ornate that you see like in a trade right now, where it's, you know, the bigger spots. I'm sure there's some cryptic reasoning behind it. Again, maybe these guys are found further in more of the dense forest areas, as opposed to, you know, like the ornates out here, where, you know, they're maybe not as far inland, or, you know, deep in the understory, and like in these real, you know, remote, heavily forested areas. So there could be a variation, you know, with the pattern, just because of something like that. But they're just, you know, again, looking at especially that big male and then that bigger male's head. Again, it's hard to argue how you don't believe that they're separate and
insane.
You know, entirely the same.
Mean, it's a completely different, you know, skeletal structure to have a head like that. The skulls, if you compare just the skulls of them, must be completely different. Just for, you know, going back to a bit basics, if people, what's the easiest way of distinguishing the babies? Because the heads, does the head show up as much if you compare them? But is it still the spots, I'd imagine, for the, you know, the Ornates, if you can count them spots? Do you want to just explain what that is, so people know if they're, you know, they're buying an Ornates or they're buying a Niloticus?
Yeah, I mean, every ornate baby I've ever seen for sale, they're always black and yellow. So that's one distinguishing characteristic, the 3 to 5 rows of spots. And yeah, they're even as hatchlings. They're, you know, if you compare, if you have a Nile and an Ornate next to each other, that yeah, they're completely different because your typical Niles that we have in the trade, you know, they have the smaller cylindrical, you know, kind of pointy heads compared to even a small, you know, hatchling and Ornate, same size is going to have more of a, you know, shorter, stubby head to them. But the black and yellow is just, it's a dead giveaway, and then the pink tongue. So
yeah, pink tongue. That's a, you got loads of stuff to work on, and that row of spots is from the hind, sorry, the front legs, sort of to the base of the tail, isn't it? Some of
correct.
the yeah. If you can count basically 5 or less, then you've got a or what I'm still calling Ornates.
Correct.
So yeah, that's
yeah.
just so people know. Let's get that back out. But yeah, that's insane on the head of those, and they got to be, you know, got to be doing something different to those West African ones. Let's get a more typical one.
I think the rest of those photos are more like, there you go. That's a hatchling, and I think that's in Cameroon as well.
Oh, really? Yeah, that's even got the more banded sort of look from what I remember from the Ornates that I had.
Yeah,
that's stunning. That's insane. The contrast on that is crazy.
Yeah. And like I said, that banding pattern, kind of, it's almost like the relation with the lace. Like I said, the lace from the northern part are more spotted, and then lace farther south are more banded. And these guys kind of have that same, you know, like I said, the ones from like Gabon, Cameroon, they have more of that banding, and then, you know, you're further west, like you're, you know, Togo and Benin, you know, have the bigger spots. I don't know if it's something either that, I mean, I know, like I said, Faust, when he hatched his, even Sam Lee, when he bred him at the Bronx Zoo, me and Rob ended up getting hatchlings from him, and, you know, they were just same thing like your typical Ornate. They didn't have like that fused, you know, banding to them. And like I said, I've only seen that with, you know, like the guys coming out of Gabon, Cameroon. And then before the Congo became the Democratic National, what, you know, the 9 letters that it is now, when you had like the distinct Congo locality, that was the same thing too, as the ones from the Congo were really, you know, had like the banding instead of the spots. So that's also kind of misleading, where now, you know, people will bring them in, or they'll have them up for sale, and they're like, you know, Congo Ornates, and it's like, they're not Congo. I'm like, they're Ornates, but they're, you know, they're not from Congo, because they're completely different looking. And that's just kind of a pattern thing. I mean, like the Ornates that I have here, you know, Nick Lillis gave me that male, and he's, I don't know, a little bit over 5 foot, but, you know, he's only a couple of years old. But I'm sure, you know, he'll hit 8 foot, no problem. You know, they're just, again, they're another species that just, you know, gets big and big and big and big and big and big. I know that the biggest one, and it's the other thing that's kind of annoying with the, you know, sinking them back into, you know, just Melodicus, is Baum and Ziegler elevated them in 1997, and they're like, you know, no, they're separate, they're, you know, they're their own species. And then, you know, years later, it's like, no, they're 8% DNA difference. It's like, well, they're structurally different, you know. And again, I would imagine too, if you compared your west and your east, you know, same thing, just for photos. I mean, you know, your naked eye, you can tell like that looks completely different from that. And I don't know, you know, if you'd find you know, a DNA difference with them as well, or, you know, something on that level. I do know there was a hemipene difference between the Ornates and your typical, you know, Melodicus, but
it's another thing
that went to the that went to the wayside.
I mean, that's more than you get with a lot of species that have been split. Do you know what I mean? And like I said,
Yeah.
I'm a split all day long, but you know, to have all those things fall into place, morphologically speaking, is just insane.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, taxonomy is a funny thing. If nobody uses it, and if you keep using Varanus or Ornates, we've been using chondropython now for 50 years plus, then it doesn't really matter. So as long as the hobby keeps using it, then it doesn't actually matter the taxonomy of them. So yeah, like I said, luckily before they don't sound like they breed together, so that's another tick. So but yeah, they're definitely different. So has there been much success with breeding the Ornatus compared to the Niles? I'm shocked that the Niles being bred. People are being successful with the Ornates.
You cut out a little bit there, Chris.
Oh, sorry, mate. I was just saying, is anyone working with the Ornatus apart from yourself, or has there been much success with those?
Currently, I know my buddy Andrew. He's got a nice group. Actually, he's got a couple of Ornates that I gave him years ago. He might be getting close with them. Or no, I take that back. He just hatched them out not that long ago. I don't know what the hell I'm thinking.
Yeah.
So yeah, he just bred them. And then prior to that was like Sam Lee, but that was back in late '90s. And then Rob Faust when he did his. But
yeah.
Offhand, no, the Nile's being produced just recently by Fox and Chris Parker. That's like the latest Nile wise, but ornate wise, no, I don't think. I don't know if there's people out there working with them outside of me. I'm sure there are, but I'm just not aware of any recent successes as far as hatching them, other than like I said, my buddy Andrew, but he's kind of low key. So
yeah, no, well, that's good. I think they probably would be more popular for me, and at least there's a lot of selective breeding you could do with the Ornates because they're so beautiful anyway. So they might be an easier sell, I would have thought, than the West African Niloticus.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it too is you show up with the your big adult male, and he's 7 foot, and he's got 25, 30 pounds on him, and you got a bunch of babies that he produced. Yeah, sure they'd sell a lot quicker in that regard.
Yeah.
But again, it's one of those aspects of this hobby at times is like if you're patient, and you didn't buy this thing to throw it away the second it tail whips you or hisses at you. I mean, my female still there's some interaction with her, but she just assumed tearing my face off, and it's not her just being vengeful and a hateful animal. It's just it takes some time. I remember guy had given me, I don't know if he was moving or he couldn't keep this Ornate anymore, and her name was Sunny. She was, I think, 6 foot, big female Ornate, and I'm at his house to pick it up. I'm in Wisconsin, and I come in the house, and she's like free roaming in his house, and every time I get near her, she'd run to him, and then he'd start walking this way, and she'd follow him. I'm like, thing really, it wasn't that it bonded with him, but it kind of bonded with him. I mean, I'm not a big, oh, my animal loves me kind of person, but it definitely, knew him and was scared of me, and would seek him like, hey, get me away from this guy. But yeah, she was awesome, but she ended up going to Chris Dieter in Texas, and I don't know what he ended up doing with her, but yeah, she was really personable, and it was again another example. I know there was a guy, all I know is his name is Ben, and it was a pet store, I think in England. I'm not sure, but he had a big Ornate as a picture of him next to it, and Ornate's head is like this, and he's just sitting there like petting him. And then there was another guy who I think he's got a video you can still find on YouTube, but it's his big male, and he's feeding it chicks by hand. And he's like
Yeah,
rubbing the chicks on his finger and like putting it by his face, and he's tongue flicking it, and he won't bite it, and then gives him a chick. I mean, like I said, they're personable to some extent. It's just.
Do you think they're a bit less defensive, aggressive, whatever you want to call it, than the West African ones? That's what I found with them. My Ornate was pretty good. I don't know if that was just a special. It was a nightmare as a baby, but when I worked quite a bit, it became really, really personable compared to a lot of the West African ones I had when I had my shop. But yeah, have you found any difference with them, sort of behavioral wise?
No, I think they both come around if you give them the time. I mean, last big adult male, regular Nile I had actually went to Rob Faust, and I remember I got that out of a pet store, and it was, I don't know, 4 foot, and it was just hell on wheels. That thing was just, a nightmare. And I got him home. I put him in a nice big cage and worked with him for maybe 6 months, and we got to the point to where I could pull his tongue out of his freaking mouth. I could grab him. There was nothing I needed to not be worried about with him. I could grab him at any point, pull him out, and yeah, they're fine. It's just, again, it's just you just keep them the right way and working with them and spending the time with them. Because I've seen plenty of adult West African common Niles that are pretty mellow. That big South African one that I missed out on. I remember I walked into the cage and just picked it right up, and he's just like tongue flicking and looking. He was real laid back, and God, I wish I would have bought that damn lizard.
Was it just the one, Bryan? That's the only one you've ever seen of the South African ones, or have you seen any more?
No, I haven't seen. I had a whole bunch of them back in the day. In fact, that symposium, I was like one of the last speeches on like the last day. I got like a whole half hour, and I was a dumb kid, and it was kind of I'm looking at like all the stuff that being presented by like Bennett and Eidenmuller and Horn, and I'm like, here's my shitty cages, and like, all right, this Nile I think is an alpha male, and these two alpha beta, and it was like night and day. But that was like the last batch that you could get, and then they were done.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it's another. That's another aspect of this hobby where it's like, man, that big male, that other one of the Burundi, that big adult that I showed you that you clicked on earlier, and that little Burundi, man, those are 3 lizards I wish I could, go back in time that I regret getting rid of. It was the one right, go down, and then to the right. Nope.
That one? No.
He was, he's above the Cameroon one. Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
So this is an interesting backstory on this. I did not name him, but you could see that big black collar right in their front forearm. Like I said, that's a big tell with the Burundis. That, like I said, it's another distinguishing characteristic that breaks away from them. So basically, that lizard's name was Bugum, Bugum or whatever. I was at the Chicago Herpetological Society monthly meeting, and there was what do you call it? They always have like these, hey, there's people that are looking to sell or donate, or they need an adoption or whatever. And I seen on it was like adult Nile monitor, and I freaking grabbed it, and I called this lady and ended up getting this Ornate, or getting this Nile from her. And her backstory was she was what do you call it? A missionary, and she was in like Rwanda, Uganda area, and she was given it this baby lizard as a gift from the elders of this tribe or whatever, and she somehow got it out here and brought it home and raised it up. And then she was getting older, like she was, I don't know, arthritis, or she just couldn't take care of it anymore. And I had a couple younger Niles at that point, but I remember getting him, and that same thing. That thing was like super tame and just real laid back, and just an awesome big freaking Nile. And unfortunately, I got rid of him to get a hatchling croc monitor. And
right.
But yeah, I would trade back that croc monitor in a heartbeat to have that Nile back again. But yeah, it's just unfortunate that locality. I don't know if we'll ever get them again.
Yeah.
And there was just a handful of them that came in, and that's another one I wish that somebody fast forward or rewind back to that time were put in capable hands and they did something with them, because that they're beautiful. I mean, that color, you can't see it in that photo because it's like a photo of a photo. But it just, there was so much like aqua blue in it and just solid black and, parts of yellow. I mean, it was just a beautiful lizard. Rob had one similar to it, Faust did, and it's in his book. There's like four or five different pictures of it in his book, but he was the only other person I knew that had him. There was a couple pet stores that had him, and I ended up getting that smaller hatchling that was in that cage, that old 35 millimeter photo we showed. But yeah, they just it was like a one-time deal. I think there was maybe 20 of them that came in, and that was it. And like I said, unfortunately, they're all gone now. So maybe one day, but I don't see it soon. And for the life of me, I don't know why they can't come in from South Africa anymore. I mean, there's other South African reptiles that are brought in, and it's like, well, can't you get these? And I think another half of it too is I know, because I've pursued trying to get like Cameroon, Gabon, and all. Me, Rob, and my buddy Andrew are like the big three Nile nerds, and it's always been like the same kind of backstory where it's like, well, if I get them, it's going to be like another $10. And it's like, all right, well, we'll take 50. So we'll pay the extra $10. It's not a big deal. And it's always been like, like, well, I don't know if I'm going to do it. Or, there's always been a couple times like, well, can you get like a photo before you ship them, kind of a deal? Like, if they are what you say and they're coming from this, we'll freaking take them all. And that's always been another issue, is trying to get a photo. And then even just like I said, trying to convince you, like, we'll take, if you want $100 a piece, we will take them. If they're coming out of Burundi, Uganda, Rwanda, we'll take them. You can get them out of Cameroon, get them out of you're getting them out of where. I'm like, yeah, we'll take them. And it just always seems to peter out. So, and again, it's frustrating because it's like, there's other reptiles coming from those locales. I mean, Gaboon vipers are still imported every once in a while. And it's like, well, obviously you're getting them out of Gabon. You can't throw a couple Niles in there and we'll take them.
Yeah, it's not enough pound signs probably, or dollar signs on it to make it someone's effort sometimes. It happens a lot all over the place. You need to add a few more zeros. But yeah, it's a shame. It's a real shame. But
the other thing I've heard too is sometimes, you'll like the guys out there that actually, could do the exporting and they have all the permits and license and all, is I don't know, trying to be explaining to like the hunters, like, this is what I'm looking for, and then the hunters being like, okay, yeah, I'll get you that. And it's like, no, I'm like, you're telling me what I want to hear. I just want to make sure that this is what I want. This one exactly that looks like this. Oh yeah, no problem. And it's like, all right, well, again, is it what they're going to bring in? What you think you're trying to get, or is it, they're just trying to say yes because they want to get paid either way for whatever they bring you. So it's a nightmare. It's they're probably walking past them every day to go and collect something. Probably more common. That's what happens a lot over here with some of the wild caught stuff we get. It's like, can you get this little green lizard? They're like, yeah, and then they just walk past it to go find something that they used to collect in. So it can be tricky. For sure.
But hopefully they'll turn up again. and then they get into the right hands with yourself and the other lads that are doing it by the sounds of it. Just got a question from Mike. Sorry, I haven't got to the chat on this episode. It's been very interesting from Bryan. If anyone's got any questions for it, just chuck it in and I'll ask Bryan for you. But Mike just said there, Bryan, do you recall whatever become of the giant ornate that Jeff Lamb had?
Yeah, that photo that he's talking to, it's in Rob Faust's book, and it's also in who is this? Varanus Lizards of the World with Bianca and King. Yeah. I don't know if Jeff owned that actual ornate. I'm pretty sure. I think I have pictures of it. No, I definitely have pictures of it. That symposium in San Diego back in '95. There was a dude that showed up to it, and he had a big freaking giant male ornate with him. And I think he was friends with Jeff or knew Jeff. And I don't know if that was his lizard or if he, I don't know, gave it to Jeff. But I just know Jeff has the credit for those photos. And I don't know if there could have been an ornate that they had at the zoo, but I also know Jeff had a just enormous freaking blackthroat that when everyone went out there for that symposium, the people that were there like the day before, I think Jeff was still at the San Diego Zoo, and it was like a behind the scenes tour, and there was this giant freaking blackthroat that they had there on display. But yeah, Mike, to answer your question, I don't know if that animal was, the zoo's or if that was that guy that brought it there, because he had it. He had like a little pond for it and everything. And it's funny, he's got it walking around and he's eating like all these snails. They're, like in the garden area of the hotel there, which was kind of funny. But yeah, I'm not really sure, Mike.
Is this another one from Cameron?
That is another Uganda.
Oh, Uganda.
Yeah.
Really pretty, that one.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, crazy. Yeah, I'd love some of them. I'd really now I can keep stuff, and we'll get onto the caging and stuff in a minute. Now you can keep them. I can keep them over in a bigger enclosure. It'd be amazing to work with them again. They're fantastic.
Yeah, as far as I know too now, they're protected in Uganda, so you can't. You can't touch them from there. However, just south is Rwanda and Burundi, just south of that. So, again, trying to find connecting points and people out there or who can access them is just a whole nother situation. But that's sorry,
mate. Let me just get it back up.
Yeah, you got to scroll up toward the top there.
Now, sorry. What's going on with this one?
All right, so the guy holding that ornate, that's Brad Zaswadel, who buddy of mine who lives in Wisconsin. He was a big water monitor breeder. He had the Gurus originally, or he was working with the Guru line and all that. So he ended up getting that monster, and Brad's a big dude. Brad's like 6 foot tall, so you could see how big that lizard is in comparison, knowing that he's like a 6 foot tall dude. That ended up going to my buddy Orlando at his Alligator Alley in Wisconsin, and I don't know how long he had it till it just ended up dying. But yeah, that is a massive freaking ornate, and it's not again as big as it is. Again, this is like this is what you're looking at as an adult. And it's one thing I guess I really like about the ornates too is, with all the mixture with the water monitors now, it's kind of hard to be like, well, I like the pattern on this one. It's a cool looking water, and then hope that it gets up to like 6-7 foot and not like petered out at like 5, because it's like, well, it's a combination of this and that. It's like, it's finding like the. When the first sulfur monitors came into the country back in the 90s, those things were enormous. Yeah. And now, because they're mixed, is it the Javan or the Sumatrans that are the bigger ones?
Sorry, the Sumatrans, the macromaculatus are big, really big. But yeah, those sulfurs are big as well. We probably got a maybe 7 foot one here. It's a wild caught one, but as you were just saying there, they started crossing them into some bowers and stuff, which are a lot smaller. So it's sort of been lost a bit. But yeah, they're giants, the sulfurs we've got.
Yeah. But like I said, fortunately with the ornates, you know, they're, again, every male has a potential to get that big. And, you know, again, as they get older, you know, and the more you work with them, they lose their fear with you, and they just, you know, it's just time and patience. And it's across the board, right? Because, you know, with any one of these monitors you're keeping, I mean, you know, they all develop their own, I guess, personalities and your interactions with them. I mean, hell, even my lace, which I really don't handle or do anything with, but at any point I could go in any one of these cages and pluck them right out of there to do whatever I need to do without worrying about getting bit or any of that. So the ornates are a little different right now,
though. So I think we've touched on all that, unless there's anything more you want to say about the localities and stuff, Brian. Do you want to get into how you keep them, the cages and stuff? Maybe just touch on what sort of size clutches do these Nile monitors have? That's something I don't
know. They're not real super prolific, like you know, your typical Niles. Where, you know, I know Sis and Cowles. I think it was Cowles, Raymond Cowles, back in the 30s. He was like the, you know, pioneer on Niles, doing the bulk of the research. You know, like 60 eggs, 40 eggs. I know Chris Parker, I think his was maybe, I think it was like 30 eggs he produced, but that, again, this is the regular Nile. But ornates, like 20 eggs. They're not real, you know, big egg. As far as I know, you know, from a captive's perspective, even in the wild, it's not really, there's like no super
in-depth research.
Information about, you know, where exactly they're nesting. I mean, like lace, melodicus, you know, have always been like just dominant termite mound, you know, egg layers because of the season and all that. But I was just reading the other day on, you know, the situation with the Niles in Florida, and it's like, well, we don't have any like real big termite mounds that, you know, exist in, you know, in the States compared to like stuff in Africa. So, and they know they're breeding out there. So I'm wondering where the Niles are, where they're, you know, where they're nesting, because I don't think they have access to termite mounds that are anywhere near comparable to the African stuff.
They might have adapted just to start digging them into the ground, I guess. I mean, when females get desperate, they seem to work out a lot of the time, or they end up dying. That's the problem with the monitors. They either scatter them, bury them, or they die, unfortunately. But yeah, maybe not as strict as the various the lace monitors. But that's interesting. So that's something different again for the Ornates. You know, there's me with my taxonomy hat on. So they've got smaller clutches, bigger heads, all the morphological stuff. So hopefully
just bigger bodies in general. I mean, they're massive. They're on par with like albigularis.
That's what they remind me of. Seeing the head of those ones, they look way more like that than they do the West African ones, apart from the color of them, obviously. So very interesting. But yeah, that's been super, Brian, on explaining those stuff. So let's talk about the cages and stuff. These big monitors need big cages, and that can come with big problems of heating, lighting, and all the rest of it. I've seen a few of your pictures from last Monitor Fest. Your enclosures look amazing.
Thank you.
But let's get into some of the how you house some of these monsters.
Currently, the one male, he's in it's like a baseball diamond shaped kind of enclosure, which I don't like. I'm probably going to take down. But that is probably like 8 by 8, but the middle is kind of cut because of the angle that I have the doors, and it's maybe 6 foot tall. There's a big pool in there, so he could swim, or he could swim, you know, he could go in the water. And then I have this giant piece of driftwood that has been like his main hide. He's still you know, getting used to. He's only been here for like 2 weeks, so it's going to take him a little bit of time to come around. And he's got like this is the one I got from Nick.
Yeah.
So he's got one big ledge for basking, and there's like another ledge that he can connect, and then he's got the big pool. The pool is, I don't know, like 1.5 feet off the ground, and then it's just open floor space for him. But as far as the basking, which I use for all my lizards, and you know, I mentioned this in another pod. I've been, as far as I know, like one of the first people to use just a whole row of lights. So when these lizards are basking, they're sitting not on one spotlight or two. They have a whole row of lights. And I do that with all my monitors. The only exceptions are right now like the hatchling lace and the couple of Dorianus I have from Doraka. These are still kind of small, but they're getting to that point where, you know, once a couple more months, they're going to have to, you know, I'm going to have to do that multiple light deal with them. But the female, her cage is not as big. It's the same baseball shape, and I'm going to have to do something with that one as well. I'm going to be moving them both into newer enclosures. For her specifically, because I need to, you know, have enough floor space so I can get a nest box in there, get her a nice water system. They definitely like the, like from all the data from like wild observations and all that, they like to burrow. I don't even think they burrow. I think they just kill whatever made that burrow, eat it, and then they just use that burrow. But yeah, they like to, you know, it's almost like a subterranean kind of, you know, a rook or nest, you know, an overnight, you know, area, like their own little cave.
Yeah.
So that's something I'll definitely incorporate in these new enclosures. And as far as you know, like temperature and all that, I mean, definitely higher humidity with these guys because they're, you know, they're definitely a tropical species. So right now with the water and the heat, like my pole barn that they're in, it's heated, but we're coming into summer out here, so a couple more weeks it'll be, you know, 100% humidity in here and like 90, even though it's insulated. Just it'll be hot, and it's like perfect weather for them. But yeah, with the newer enclosures, I'll be incorporating kind of I want to move the water instead of like the aeration. I want to actually like have like a almost like a, not like a waterfall, but something where it's not stagnant, it's moving. So I think that's something that, you know, I need to kind of really plan ahead with that. But overall, you know, with the housing, whether it's ornate or just regular Niloticus, you know, the water feature is definitely something that they need. And then as adults, obviously, you know, you got your cage getting bigger and bigger and bigger as they go. But, you know, the female's cage, I think that's another reason why she might be a little, you know, a little more defensive is, you know, when she was put in that enclosure, she was probably like a foot smaller. So she's grown, and, you know, now that she's a little bit bigger, it's kind of it's not an ideal cage for her right now because there's not a lot of floor space. And, you know, it's almost like she feels cornered because she's got nowhere to go, you know. And I'm sure once I get her into a larger enclosure and she has like that little subterranean hide area, and they get everything kind of set up for her with the multiple ledges. I don't think I'm going to be doing logs with them. I probably won't go height-wise super high. My tallest enclosure is like 10 something, and I'm never doing it again. So, but you don't really need them with the ornates. The ornates are more, you know, terrestrial, and granted they could climb, but, you know, and it's one thing too that I kind of want to avoid is having too many, you know, different height here, kind of make everything where, you know, if I have one high area, like one big ledge, you know, the next one is, you know, just far from it, and then they'll connect to a net. So if they do flip or fall or lose their footing, you know, they're not falling straight down.
All the way down,
yeah, that's something that
sorry, but did you touch on what temperature it was? You were keeping
Oh,
them
yeah.
at?
No, I'm sorry. So they're ambient because they're both kind of sealed, because they hit, they're glass doors. Probably like 80, 82, 83 in there, but I have their basking, so their basking temps are easily like 120, 125.
Yeah.
And because of the water and, because of the aeration, the humidity is, usually over 80%.
Yeah.
But yeah, usually their temperature, the only time it drops down is just at night when I, shut the lights off and everything in here. The heater's set at 70, but it hasn't been kicking on at night because it's still kind of warm in here.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm sure at night it's probably getting maybe down to like 77, 76 in there, and they're fine. They definitely have enough room to, thermoregulate and bask and get out of there. And
do you use any additional lighting? Are you on the same thing as Mike with no UV or LEDs? Do you have anything just to brighten it up, or just you rely on the basking?
No, right now they're neither one have what do you call it, UV. They just have the the regular basking bulbs so they could warm up. The female probably I'm not against UV. I don't know about UVB, but UVA is fine. I'll probably do that. Like, I usually do that with my lace females too, just in case, just to be on the safe side. I'll give them UVA. But with her, I'll probably set it up.
But do you use any other? Do you have to use any other lighting just to light the cage up or anything?
There's
just like a LED bar or something.
Yeah, they're like the big flat LED panels. There's two of them with the male right now, and then the female. There's actually like 5. They're like the ceiling, like you do a drop ceiling and you put your light fixture in there. Yeah, those are what are on her cage right now, and it kind of lights it up a little bit. But I also, I think too that they don't really, super bright light. I think they kind of like the little bit of a darker corner, a darker area. So that's something too I'll incorporate with the cage, as far as being able to, like I said, give them like that little dark subterranean spot to get away from it. I also want to incorporate plants, but I'm still trying to figure out the magic to keeping them from getting completely destroyed.
For some reason here we're lucky. The outdoor stuff, it doesn't wreck the plants, but as soon as I do it inside, it just never gets a foothold enough to be to bounce back from it. Outside, all the tree monitors and stuff, and even the crocodile monitors we got, they didn't ruin the plants at all. As soon as you try to do it inside, they just smash them up for whatever reason. It's just hard work. But it'd be nice. They look a lot nicer with some natural plants in there for sure. Are you heating the water at all, Brian, for those?
No, I haven't. I think a lot of it because I, in particular, where both of the ponds are at, there's lighting above it, and I'll put like anywhere from 125 watt to like 250 watt bulbs, the big basking ones. There's a local hardware store that they have them, and they're big heat bulbs. They're nothing special. They're not like a plant, whatever.
No.
But they'll heat up the water, surprisingly, because it's perfect. Plus all my framing, all the material is all 2x4, and then the one cage is the fake rock that I did with the styrofoam. So it's kind of already insulated. And then the male's cage is all that universal rock, and that's insulated with spray foam. So, they both retain a lot of heat. And even with the water coming out of my, water system here, out of the hose, it's cold when it comes out, but within like an hour, it's like getting back to room temperature. And it's, and then when the light's on there too, it kind of warms it up. That's something too where, like I said, when I go about making these new enclosures for them, the water system is something that I really want to concentrate on to make it efficient. somewhat maintenance free as much as possible. You know, the heating element of it, and then obviously the, you know, fake kind of waterfall or just having it moving.
Right.
But it's just, like I said, it's going to be a little bit of a challenge. But I'm sure I could figure it out. I mean, it's minor plumbing. It's something I've always told people that are wanting to get in the monitors. You got to learn how to be a plumber, an electrician, and a carpenter, because, you know, you're never going to be able to buy a cage big enough.
For the big stuff, you have to. For the little dwarfs and stuff, you know, an electrician and stuff would be easy to know how to do electrical. But as soon as you get into the bigger stuff, you need to know how to do it yourself, for sure. You're not buying that off the shelf. So anything else you want to talk to you about on the Nile stuff, Bryan, or we'll start wrapping up? We're getting up to 2 hours now. When are you going to pair them? You haven't started pairing them yet.
Yeah. Basically, what's going to hold it up right now is obviously the cage. Excuse me. Doing the cage, especially you got to get the female's cage done before the male. Getting you know, the nest box dialed in, that's going to be number one. And then the water aspect of it. The other half of it too is I need that male to put on a little bit more size. Ornates if they're the same size or the male's just a little bit bigger, even if she's, you know, cycling, from what I've heard from Rob and Buddy Andrew, like they'll test that male. Like they will,
right?
You know, if they can't get pinned down by him, you know, they'll just keep doing whatever. So yeah, I want to put a little bit of size on him. Not that much, but enough to where, you know, he's got some heft over her. And then I don't know. It's right now just contingent on how quick I could get her cage up and kind of get all that dialed in. I mean, they're both the same age, roughly, from what I understand. So she's in that age. She's ready to go. So, and I've been kind of holding back from just pounding the crap out of her with food to get her to cycle. But there's also a little bit. They seem to, from a captive perspective, they're not like the lace or some of these other, you know, your true monitors. You know, like the mangrove, the indica stuff, where you just, you know, you keep cranking them out, and you'll get clutch after clutch after clutch. They seem to be like one clutch and they're done for the year kind of a deal.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, you know, there's probably some factors maybe I could play with as far as I don't know, screwing around like a range cycle or something. But I do know when I had tree monitors back in the day, you know, I had my big Nile and this big enclosure, and then I gotten all these like fiberglass shower stalls. So all my tree monitors, I had blues, blacks, and cordenses. And I had them all in these shower stalls. And then the hell else? I had a pair of Boland's pythons down there too. But the one thing that was really, you know, opened my eyes with is the tree monitors, dude. When it's in the fall, going into winter out here, just all the storms we get and all that barometric pressure, just freaking, just, you know, skies like it got them crazy. So they would just, you know, every time them storms would come through, because they'd come through for, you know, like a week or two, I'd always get good locks and all that. But trying to think of where I was going with this.
With the Niles, maybe going just once a year, you might be able to.
I wonder if that barometric, like the storms and all that stuff that we're going to get here, because they seem to, in the one article, what the hell is two Italian people, can't think of it, like Angelucci and some other person who did some studies in I think it was in Chad, and they found that the you know, basically like right after the rainy season is when they were, you know, finding hatchlings. So that's why I think maybe it's a one-time kind of a deal, once a year breeding with them. But that would be something too. You know, once again I get her set up in the proper cage, and like I said, I got her nest box and You know, she's all dialed in with that, then I could try to start hitting her, you know, and then seeing if any of that, you know, summer storms or something are going to play a factor in it. So curious to see.
For sure. What's the incubation time on the Niles and the Ornates? Is it quite long still? Imagine it would be.
Yeah, you would think with the Niles it would be, you know, like a lace, you know, like because I've had lace go like 9 months to the day, and my mean average has always been like 245. And then, you know, in between her, but like 180 days I've heard for both Ornates and for lace.
That's good.
Yeah, so you would think they would take a little bit longer, but I would I would think like in particular with the Ornates, because again, there's no evidence of where they're nesting, but you know, maybe I don't know if they're making you know, if they're using termite mounds out there, or if there's even termites that, you know, make mounds big enough that they could dig in, or if they're kind of like I don't know, like not so much like you know, like your turtles, but you know, you got digging them in the, you know, in the banks and stuff, and cooking in the sun, and they're hatching after like 120 days or something. I mean, it's kind of like Mertens monitors, you know, digging in the banks, you know, in the wilds. So that might explain why they have less of what do you call it? You know, an incubation time.
It's incubation time. Yeah. Well, that's interesting. Yeah, that's the pain with these bigger stuff. This bigger stuff, it just takes so long. And monitors take long enough as it is. You know, tree monitors take forever as well. But yeah, that's really interesting that they're a bit shorter on there. So yeah, I think that's all it is on the. I mean, we're definitely gonna have to get you on for part 2, Brian, because I want to touch on the crocodile monitors. Obviously, I work with
yeah. Congratulations on the eggs.
And then, oh, cheers, mate. Yeah, they were a real pain last year. I had I think 3 females go, but I think 2 reabsorbed. I had some rats get into the nest box while she was laying. And just, you know, she laid like half the clutch and then retained the other ones, and she passed away. So hopefully this year it all goes to plan. But yeah, those Merauke ones are pretty special, and yeah, I'm stoked with 8 good eggs. So it's been nice. Long may it continue. So yeah, they were kicking my ass last year, but super cool species. Just so nice now I can keep them. You know, I'm super lucky keeping them outdoors in real big enclosures. It's a species I thought I'd never work with, being obviously from the UK. It's so difficult to keep them over there unless you dedicate something massive to them. We just haven't really got the space. Like even you guys that have got in the States, a lot more space than us, I think.
Well, yeah, that's actually, Chris, that's my next I don't know, the new chapter in my life. I've never kept anything outside. Yeah, and I want to, but it's hard in Illinois just because it's, you know, our crappy weather. Summer's short, but when I do plan on moving out of here, my wife wants to move back to Arizona.
Okay, yeah, perfect.
So yeah, when I plan to get out of Illinois, yeah, that's going to be a whole new challenge for me, because like I said, I've always wanted to do it. I just never tried it yet. So
yeah, I mean, I haven't got anything dialed in like I have with the indoor stuff. It's like being a farmer almost. You know, when you hear these farmers like worried about their crops because they're looking at the weather all the time. That's what I feel like sometimes. I'm like, shit, it's been raining for 4 days constantly and been pretty cold. And then you get a week where it doesn't rain at all. It's you don't feel in control, but it's obviously beautiful seeing them outdoors, and when it works, it's amazing. But it's a different thing altogether. I'll have another, God knows how long of working it out. So it's a new challenge for sure. It's nice. But yeah, very cool. Let's just end on Monitor Fest. And I was very jealous because I'm yet to go to the States, and that was one thing I would definitely come over for. Looked like you guys had a blast, but I don't really know the origins of Monitor Fest. Can you just go into that a little bit?
I stole it.
Okay.
So from Eric, Eric and Owen, because remember Owen, he came out here a couple years ago, and I think it was the first time I laced for. Well, no, that was with Ari, God, I want to choke him. Ari's over here for Tinley, and my bell, my feet, they're locked up. And this is like the first time they're copulating. And Ari's like, we got to go. I'm like, dude, I don't want to go anywhere. I'm like, they're breeding. I'm like, I don't want to leave. But yeah, Owen, he came out here and, you know, he was telling me about Carpet Fest and, you know, like their origins of it. And now there's like a Carpet Fest across the country. You know, there's like one in Texas, then out east where it started. But yeah, I just basically, I started thinking about it, and because of where I live, you know, I got this giant pole barn, and you know, I'm in the country kind of, so I'm on 2 acres, so I got a big long freaking gravel driveway coming out of my barn, and then I got a big driveway, you know, from my house. So I'm like, you know what, I could probably have, you know, 20, 30 people here, no problem. So Stefani, who's like the catalyst behind, you know, making me do it all the time. He's like, you know, dude, we got to do it. I'm like, all right. So the whole point of it too was, you know, like the NRBC Tinley show that happens out here twice a year. You know, all the monitor guys that come in from out of state, and then the monitor guys that are here and they're venting. It's always just a mess to hang out, to talk to anybody because of how crowded Tinley is, for one. And then, you know, like Nick was vending. He took Stefani's old spot this last March. And, you know, just trying to talk with Nick for more than 2 minutes, and you got people coming up there and like, hey, can I see it? Taking a pic. You know, it's like you're just constantly being interrupted. And it got to the point there, I'm like, dude, all right, we'll have a monitor fest. We'll have it at my house. And, you know, there's no vending. There's no animals. I'm like, dude, I'm going to buy all the beer, all the freaking food, and I'll rent like a tent. Like, so I made it into this whole big kind of deal, and it took off. And, you know, this last one was the 4th year, and this is the biggest one so far. I had over 70 people here, and probably from 30 different states.
Wow.
So, but that was the origin of just basically have all the monitor people that are around here and people that want to come on and just be able to just hang out, have a couple drinks, shoot the shit, and catch up and be away from the just insanity that is Tinley, which is
not the business side of it.
yeah. But the irony of it is, you know, it always started with me and Mike. So me and Stefani, because, you know, when he's vending, he's like, you know, interrupted every 2 minutes. And he's like, yeah, man, we can hang out and shoot the shit. And I'm like, all right, cool. And every year I fucking had it. I probably spent a minute talking to Mike, and that's it. I don't see him for the whole rest of it. Because, you know, I'm like entertaining everybody. I'm the host, and I'm, you know, making sure everybody's got this. You need to go to the bathroom. You're happy. You need a beer, blah, blah. So I'm all over the place. And then, you know, and Mike's like a rock star. So then people come in, oh, man, Mike's here, and they want to sit and talk with him. And then, you know, it's a great time. And it's, you know, I appreciate it immensely because, again, people coming out here traveling from all over the freaking place, and, you know, they're paying for airfare and for gas or, you know, hotel and this and that. And it's like, it's only one day. And, you know, it's like, I can't believe how big it's just bloomed into. And I'm grateful that, you know, like I said, I get people coming from all over the states to come out here for a day, you know, but I talked to Mike about it in the past. I'm like, dude, be cool if we get some people from Europe out here, but I'm like, you know, we'd have to fucking put up some dough. I'm like, you know, put them up in a hotel room or something. I'm like, you know, I wouldn't want somebody freaking, you know, coming all across the pond for a one-day event, you know. But not only that, it's like 8 hours. But that being said,
can you hear me? Sorry, it just glitched out for me there. You said the last bit I got was people from Europe.
Yeah, it'd be nice if we could do that. But I told Mike, I'm like, we'd have to fork out some dough because, you know, it'd be quite a haul to come out there. I'm like, it'd have to be, you know, there'd have to be other things that would, I guess, be part of it. You know, like a lot of times, a lot of people, they'll go by Mike and they'll check out his stuff. And then they'll, like, you know, hit the zoo or something. I mean, you know, there's stuff I guess you could do, but.
Have you thought about doing any, like, incorporating any talks or anything? You could probably do like presentations pretty easy.
We talked about that before, and
Right.
every year it's kind of like, 2 months before it like goes right out the window, and it's like, oh yeah, maybe we'll talk about it next year. We did the year before. We didn't do it this year. It wasn't so much talks. We just did like a live podcast from sitting on the deck.
Yeah.
But short of that, I don't think the talk thing would be I don't know.
It's too much for social.
Yeah, and then not only that, like I said, it's just people eating and drinking and shooting the shit. And this last thing is like, well, hey, I'm gonna go talk over here about something I just told you about 10 minutes ago. You want to hear it talk? But doing like the live like podcast thing, that was I think probably the best as far as that goes. But
like I said, I've seen it over the last few years, and the last group photo, it looked like that was a lot of people. So that's good for the hobby as well. So good, lot of network.
People that weren't in the photo because they're outside doing whatever, and I'm like, oh, shit, you missed the photo, So, but yeah, my driveway was just 3 deep all the way back to the freaking road, and then same with my other driveway. I'm like, if this gets any bigger, I'm like, I don't know where the hell I'm gonna have people park.
That's good, and everyone behaves themselves, right, Brian?
I gotta say, that's the other thing too, is they are the most respectful group of people that come here, because I was telling Mike the other day, I'm like, dude, I think there was like 3 cigarette butts I had to pick up off the floor. That was it. And then there was 5 of us that were hanging out here till like 2 a.m. And the table we're at, there was a bunch of empty beer bottles and shit, half of which were mine, and the people all sitting with. I'm like, but yeah, I mean, literally there was like, no big cleanup. I've never had any like, beefs that, hey, I'm going to see you at Monitor Fest. And we're going to do like none of that. I mean, I've never had like, the police have to come. I mean, it's always been just very, laid back and just a great experience. I mean, it's always, and everyone, again, they're real respectful, because, my house is, there's not crap all over the place and thrown around, it's always like minor cleanup, so.
Yeah, how it should be. Yeah, you just the more people you get, it just gets more and more worrying. But I mean, hopefully people have got the respect. It's a lot to do it on your own property. It's not like it's a public or a rented place. So I'm sure people appreciate that massively. So yeah, hopefully I'll be able to get over one day. I think we'll wrap it up there, Brian. It's been an amazing podcast. We'll definitely get you on for part 2, because there's so much more we want to speak about. I did speak to Mike Stefani about us doing some sort of round table between a few of us with a Dragner and stuff like that. So I'll work that out as well. But yeah, thank you everyone for listening. Brian, if you just stay on, I'll see you backstage anyway, mate. But yeah, thank you for everyone for listening. Hope you've enjoyed it. Big thank you to Brian. Yeah, we'll end it there. Thank you very much, guys, and we'll see you soon.